Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Simichov, and you are listening to IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, the only place that your computer should be hanging out today. A little bit of an eclectic show today. I can't remember what I called it, if it was talking with donkeys, chatting with donkeys, or speaking with asses, but we are going to certainly end up and see the relevance between this week's Torah section, the Parsha HaShavua, and the events of the week ahead. The other thing we will nod our heads to former, whether you like it or not, former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, talk a little bit more about what is happening with COVID, and certainly we will discuss once again the Arab ability to miss other glorious opportunities to move ahead and join the 22nd century? Yeah. Okay. So let's see. I also want to say that I had a very eye-opening experience this week, and I'd like to know your thoughts as the chat room is open. Met with somebody today who, by all standards, met with someone who her life was falling apart. Literally, she was dying of a dread disease, knew she was dying. Children were coming in from overseas to visit with her as she were dying. She made a miraculous recovery, but is physically deformed in a way that is starable. And yet, she's embracing life. She's loving life. She's very out there and happy. And I got to thinking, what is it that we're in funks about? That we are so sad, that we're raising children not to go out unless they're the right body weight, or their skin is perfectly clear, or their hair treatment is stunning. And I'm thinking, how many opportunities are we missing in grabbing at this glorious life? My name is Andrea Simichov. I'd like very much to know your thoughts on the topic on the other side.
Israel is located in one of the most volatile areas in the world. Israel is an island of stability in a sea of war and unrest. In the midst of this turmoil, Israel stands out as a beacon of order and human progress. Each week we update you on what's happening in this, the Jewish state, a true light unto the nations. This is Jay Shapiro. Join me every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, we're back. Andrea Simichov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Just got a note from LN, who said that there was no manner of anonymously signing into the chat room. So if you can sign into the chat room, please do, and let me know where you're listening in from. I would like that very much. Or like LN, just contact me privately. Okay, really, just everyone come on over for Shabbos. It's great. Let's see. So I was a little bit disturbed this week, extremely disturbed to hear about, if it could be even said, the declining COVID situation in South Africa, as if it hasn't been bad until now. Read an article by the formidable Howard Feldman, who actually has a show on High FM 101.3 in out of Johannesburg. And Howard wrote a very powerful piece. I'll post it on the show notes today about the government corruption, which is no surprise. But where are the glimmers of hope? South Africa, I know that having had an extremely ill grandson living in South Africa, the treatment he received from the most talented and brilliant medical professionals there was par excellence. As a matter of fact, my daughter did come to Israel to explore whether or not the treatment would be better for him here. And the fact of the matter was, no, he was being treated with superior professionalism. Having said that, I know of 4 deaths that took place, 4 COVID deaths that took place this week just in the small Jewish community. So what the heck is happening out there? I was also informed that people are being sent home, that there are not enough beds in the hospital, and they're being sent home. So I don't know. We're going to take a look at this. If any of you have any thoughts, my South African friends listening in, send me a note. Send me your insights. Correct me if I'm wrong. Write to me at Andrea@IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I would like very much to hear from you. And now also in our romper room moment, I forgot to mention, hi, all you wonderful people listening in. Let's just see. Today we have listeners in from, of course, Boker Tov, Eretz Israel, that we always love. Let me just see. Oh, U.S. is here. Canada, of course. U.S., Canada's listening in. Germany. France is with us today. Sweden. Indonesia again. And Chile. The Virgin Islands. And again, I think this is our 3rd week in a row having friends, dear buddies from the Islamic Republic of Iran listening in to Pull Up a Chair on Israel News Talk Radio. We also have listeners this morning from Algeria and Australia. It really does feel kind of touchy-feely, like a warm crowd. Okay. Yeah, so the thing, in order to just kind of summarize my experience with this girlfriend this week, this woman that I had known years and years, mamish decades ago. And here she was, physically deformed in a manner that nobody could ever project, literally had been hacked apart during a 5-week period of being in a coma from a staph infection. When she woke up, she had been her fingers, her toes removed to save her life. And even then they weren't certain. Does physical deformity, does that constitute spiritual deformity? I say not. Who are we? Are we our bodies? Are we our souls? And as I said, so somebody said to me offline, they said, well, I would be horrified. I wasn't with her in her darkest moments. I wasn't privy to the kitchen table discussions between herself and her husband. But all I can tell you is that my friend Jay was the embodiment of emunah, of faith, of happiness, of joy, of living her best. And I have to tell you, the only thing that was wrong with her were the things that were visibly wrong with her. She even said to me, the shock was that nothing appears on any of her screenings when she goes to the doctors. She was left with absolutely no residual inner defects or things that had to be monitored. I found it fascinating. I found it humbling. And it was really an honor to spend that time with her. Real eye-opener. Okay? So here we go. I told you I'm going to promise you the Arab opportunity to miss an opportunity. So apparently the Palestinians, this is according to, I can't remember who wrote this article, but once again, they have rejected the Israeli deal to transfer over 1 million COVID vaccines. So it came after the announcement came. Surprise, surprise. Never will we see them standing at the Shalem border, shaking hands, thanking one another for mutual cooperation. I got to tell you, it's almost yawnable. It's almost like we're beyond laughter. It's a page filler. Okay, dross. Palestinian Authority has rejected the transfer of more than 1 million vaccines. They said the announcement came after Israel delivered the first shipment of 100,000 Pfizer vaccines. Let's see. The vaccines are soon going to expire. And this was their excuse. They expire in mid-July, I believe, or the end of July. And by the way, Israel is encouraging Israelis to vaccinate their children between 12 and 14 quickly, using these same soon to expire vaccines because the new ones will be coming out. So we're not dumping garbage onto the Palestinian Authority. No, they're saying, hey, let's all get our act together. Now let's see what's coronavirus. So according to Health Minister Nitzan Horowitz, this was his quote, coronavirus does not recognize borders or differentiate between nations. This important move is in the interest of all sides. I hope and believe the move will promote cooperation between Israel and its Palestinian neighbors in other areas as well. Once again, the shoe drops, and once again, we are met not even with respectful silence. We are responded to with rage, okay? And damned if we do, damned if we don't. Let us know, what is the Israeli move that will result in international applause and celebration? So what does the Physicians for Human Rights have to say? Okay, talk about life skew. Instead of taking responsibility and providing vaccines without delay to the entire population and without unnecessary calculations, Israel is making deals with the lives and health of millions of people. According to Gadja Majadi of the Physicians for Human Rights, Israel has a moral and legal responsibility according to international law. Let me tell you the rest of the quote. Blah, 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 plus blah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We struggle in this country with our moral and legal responsibilities. And let me promise you something, Mr. Majadi. Israelis are the first ones to call one another onto the mat if we are perceived as not doing better, best, and then a little bit more to make the lives of Israelis, Arabs, and then others around the world, and sadly for us, not necessarily in that order. Okay, let's see. We have so much. Let me see. We're running down. Engineer, time call. Yeah. So a salute to Netanyahu. Let me quickly, because we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Great article by David Weinstein, the respectable, informative David Weinstein, where he talks about the outgoing prime minister had a grand strategy for Israel and successfully implemented it. I have to tell you, I'm excerpting, but nobody will ever convince me otherwise that my precious, my flawed, my all too human Benjamin Netanyahu absolutely understood my Israel, my father's Israel. Throughout his term, Benjamin Netanyahu agonized to free the Israeli economy from its shackles, struggled to make us an attractive, gorgeous place for global investment. And guess what? He won. You know, there are Benjamin Netanyahu, who was, I'm not going to mince words, he was under siege by that devil Barack Obama. Yeah, I said it here. Okay? And yet there are those who, you can read about it, there are those better intellectuals who can give you the story behind it. He never lost sight of the fact that the U.S. is our most powerful ally. He never lost sight of the fact that despite our ugly pressure, he understood that our Jewish nation was a nation, the only home where we had and that strength and power and respectability and advancement and education were the keys to our future. That yes, the Torah has its place. I will miss greatly until his possible return could happen. I don't know. I'm not a Navi. I'm not a prophet. But I will miss the fact that when Benjamin Netanyahu walked into a room, although people may not have liked him, there were none who did not at least tremble a little, consider a lot, and know that they were dealing with a formidable and admirable and perhaps holy leader of the Jewish people. My name is Andrea Simintov. Guess what? See you on the other side.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Tamar? She's sassy.
She's smart.
She's funny.
But she's also a real Jewish mother.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tamar Yona. And yes, I can be all of those things. But at Israel News Talk Radio, I'm here to bring you the news stories and guests that you may not hear anywhere else. Join me live on air Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays for the most unique and bold talk radio in Israel.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Shalom, I'm Leah Aharoni. Join me on my show, News from the Torah. Each Sunday, we'll use the weekly Torah portion as a prism for understanding the news today. Listen to News from the Torah to gain clarity about the times we're living in and to understand your own spiritual path in the process. News from the Torah every Sunday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, we're back. Andrea Simintov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Just as I said, we can't know a man until you walk in his moccasins. Just had a very interesting chat during the break with our stalwart engineer, and we were actually talking. He and I are kind of coming in from a little bit different directions on the Bibi matter. But you know what? Honesty is honesty. And he's not even a Bibi fan. And he just said, it's painful to observe the blatant witch hunt. Craziness. And I was saying that you want term limits? Vote in term limits. 12 years is too long? Okay, I may not like it. For me, Bibi can be prime minister ad May of Esrim until 120. But that's as of this morning. I could change my mind tomorrow. Don't quote me. But nevertheless, I think about my father's Israel, my father's dream Israel that did not exist in his boyhood, that made him put his shoulders back after 1948 and say, never again. He understood never again. To those of us who are sending children to American college campuses, telling our children to hide their Magen David, to put away their Jewish star, to maybe not wear their yarmulke in public, to don't be so quick to go to that Hillel bagels and lox breakfast. And yet, on Israel Independence Day, we shout, never again, never again. Embarrassing, insipid. Do we get the leaders we deserve, or do we deserve the leaders we get? Just a question. Tossing it toward you. Okay, let's see. Let me just open up my time here. Let me know your thoughts. Get into the chat room, or again, as I said, so now I know I have to put up the Harold Feldman article. We're exhausted here. I'm just writing myself a note. Thank you, Andrea. And we're going to put up the David Weinstein article. You can check out David's stuff. He really pulls no punches. You can check him out at davidweinstein.com. Really fabulous stuff. Okay. In the How Much Do I Love Israel department, came across this because you want to hear it. Just Israeli medical science brilliance update. Okay? We may not build towers like they do in, what is that? The United Arab Emirates that everybody's running to check out the water parks. Okay. Our water parks are also not so bad. But anyway, Tel Aviv University. Let's go down quickly. Tel Aviv University is in the process of developing a nasal vaccine that will protect people from Alzheimer's and stroke. As we say around here, stick a dish. The Technion Institute of Technology, Haifa, where none of my children have any hope of going. Anyway, I'm sorry, kids. No. I really believe in you. They have developed a simple blood test capable of detecting different types of cancer. Okay, I guess they can break it down and actually identify the cancers versus sending you for all kinds of other kinds of testing. The Ichilov Center in Tel Aviv, they have isolated a protein that makes colonoscopy unnecessary to detect colon cancer with a simple blood test. Let's stop. Let's genuflect. Any of us who have gone through colonoscopies, check out the Dave Barry piece on that. Colon cancer kills about 500,000 people in the world annually. It is not a funny disease, although the testing certainly is good for a yuck or three. Acne. Acne, which one of my favorite topics. Doesn't actually kill anyone, but it does cause terrible anxiety in teenagers. And a lot of, teens go through enough torture by themselves. So apparently a startup in Israel, I think it's a startup called the Curlite Laboratory. You could Google it, have no time. They have created a cure by emitting UV rays, high intensity, which kill the bacteria that causes acne without generating additional complications. Interesting. They've been working with light for a long time. A lot of these companies. Okay, now we have another one called the Given Imaging Laboratory. A tiny camera in the form of swallowed pills transmits thousands of photos of the digestive tract, discovering polyps, cancer, sources of bleeding. Unbelievable. Hebrew University, are you with me? Okay, you still enemy of Israel? Good for you. Suck it up. Hebrew University developed an electrical neurostimulator that is implanted into the chest of Parkinson's patients, similar to a pacemaker. I know we have people with pacemakers that actually listened to the show and written to me. The emissions from this device block the nerve signals that cause tremors, which I imagine would allow people to be physically less obvious. I'm not sure what it does to the actual source of the Parkinson's, but wow, to have us participate, look like one another here. Oh my gosh, this one is interesting. The Russell Berry Institute for Nanotechnology. You think this is an easy job with all these polysyllabic words? Okay, the simple smell of a patient's breath can detect if a patient has lung cancer. I'm controlling, I'm not making jokes, breath jokes. This institute has created sensors capable of sensing and registering 42 biological markers that indicate the presence of lung cancer without the need for a biopsy. Wow. Few more to make us stand up and cheer. Israel, cardiac catheterization can be dispensed with. Wow, how many people are walking around being catheterized? A device that's now placed between fingers can measure the state of the arteries and predict the possibility of heart attack within the next 7 years. Mega stick a dish. Wow. The University of Bar Ilan studies that there's a new drug that fights viruses through the bloodstream. It's called Decoy Trap. Who names these things? Okay. And it tricks a virus into self-destruction, useful to combat hepatitis and potentially AIDS and Ebola. And in our last medical round of applause today, Israeli scientists at Hadassah, they may have discovered the first cure for, now this is a hard one, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. You know what that is. It's called Lou Gehrig's disease. Remember the famous baseball player Lou Gehrig? They identified it in an Orthodox rabbi. I don't have his name, but I remember reading about him. Stephen Hawking, the famous British scientist, he suffered from this disease, and he was discovered to be actually an anti-Semite on a certain level. I'm not sure how serious, how intense his anti-Semitism was, but he used his methods of communication were invented by Israel. So once again, boys and girls, Israel on the forefront of changing the world, bettering the world, saving your children, my children, and the generations to come. So take your anti-Semitism, take your, yeah, but those Jews, they're so annoying, take it and shove it. Okay. Oh, good morning. We have joining us today Jamaica and Nigeria. I told you about, write to me from Jamaica, Andrea at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I want to tell you about that great novel I read. Okay. Interesting. A food vendor in Philadelphia was booted. There was an upcoming Father's Day. This past Sunday was Father's Day around the world, and they had an organization, a thing called Taste of Home. And I guess they had different ethnic food trucks. And who was the one they canceled? You got it. The Israeli representative. It was called Mosheva. Mosheva. I don't want to give to, I don't know if I tried to find out if they were kosher, because if they were kosher, I would say whatever you do, go out of your way, go crazy, and buy from them. If you're not Jewish and they're not kosher, please buy from them. Anyway, they canceled Mosheva because due to the ongoing situation, they felt that they would be a disrupting force. So you see, the liberal left, inclusion, wanting everybody to participate, that extends to everyone except Jews, except Israel. And remember, when they tell you that they are just anti-Zionist, no. They are anti-Jewish. Okay? So, let's see, what else? Okay, got to something else today that I wanted to throw at you very quickly in our last few minutes before we get to our Devar Torah section. Drones. You know that I have, I drive and I pass the Iron Dome quite frequently. Well, apparently, Israel has also developed a drone that shoots, no, it's a laser that shoots down drones. This is obviously much smaller than that massive Iron Dome unit, which shakes the ground all around. And in a recent test, these drones, these lasers shot down drones within a range of about, no joking, a kilometer. Okay? In the coming years, Israel hopes to deploy a ground-based system with a range of 8 to 10 kilometers that can intercept rockets, mortar rounds, and drones. You know what I'm thinking? Terrific. How do you feel about this? Is anybody saddened the way I am saddened? That this is where our intellect, this is the way where our money, this is where our efforts go to live in Israel and to be constantly involved in our protection and safety. It kills me. All right, we're coming up soon to the Devar Torah, and we're going to be talking about Bilak and Bilam. So one of the things I want to put on your plate before the break is Rabbi Dov Ber, who was the Magid of Mizrach, was asked, as it states, truth springs out of the earth. Why aren't people always truthful? The answer is they're too lazy to bend down and pick it up.
In a time where feelings have become fact, where rational thought and common sense has disappeared, one man stands above it all.
I'm Howie Sobiker, your political hitman.
Political Hitman airs every Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. North American time, 7 a.m. Israeli time, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Andrea Simintov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I got to tell you, I'm getting such a kick. We've got this, well, we have a listener in our chat room, and he's with me for several weeks now, a long time. And WB, I really do appreciate it. And it's adorable. He keeps this kind of running summary, I would say, of the show. He's great. He synopsizes. I think we have a job for you, William, here at Israel News Talk Radio. You do a great job of kind of synopsizing it as we go away, and I am grateful. All right, so we could call this show, we could call this Parsha, this portion of the Torah, we could call it Chatting with Asses, but that may be a little too graphic. Or how about Chit Chat with the Donkeys? So we're talking, this is this is the Torah portion this week. And to me, it's always fascinating how it seems to parallel what's going on, not only in Israel, but indeed with the entire world. So, you sometimes you hear what they call the talking heads, these kooky voices, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, clearly world leadership is reading the Torah and lining it up, because when they're stupid, we talk about stupid. When they're smart, we talk about smart. And when they're brave, oh so rarely, we celebrate bravery. So today, this Torah portion, and I'm going to use the Hebrew term, the Parsha, it accounts Bilam's behavior. And without rabbinic interpretation, of course, it's kind of straightforward. A lot of us get mixed up. Who is Bilam? Who is Balak? Balak was the king of the Moabites. Okay, and we see the Moabites. Remember, Ruth is a Moabite. Moab was the tribe that actually came down from the incestuous relationship of Lavan and his daughters with the chutzpah. They named their son. She named her son Moab, which means from my father. Talk about a lack of modesty, a lack of shame, just a little bit of personal integrity. So now you have a whole tribe named after them. So we know who they are. Their basic seed is a seed of sin, a seed of ugliness, a seed of shame. So Balak, who's the king, he has asked Balaam, who's a non-Israelite sorcerer, a prophet, or whatever you want to call them, to put a curse on Israel. Balak, the king, is aware that the children of Israel have been blessed by God, and he hopes that this curse will allow his team, the Moabites, to be victorious in their battle against them. So after several entreaties from Balak, he's begging him, along with permission from God, and to stop along the way with God's angel, Balaam ends his journey at a mountaintop where from the distance, I'm just giving you the background, he sees the children of Israel. And from this vantage point, does he utter his curse? The opposite. He blesses them 4 times. So anyway, I've given you an overview. That's the umbrella overview. Isn't it fun learning together? So although Balaam, he's the major villain of this piece in the Parsha, we can't overlook that creep Balak's role in the events that are described. Balak, he himself, he's the instigator of this whole plot to curse the Jewish people, to destroy the Jewish people. Yawn, sounds familiar? He finances Balaam, and he's persistent. He's dogged in pursuing his evil goal. He can't even, he's blinded with his rage. Even when Balaam apparently despairs of his quote failed mission, and he informs Balak, informs him, Balak won't stop. He continues. He says, go on, curse them. In Jewish history, we see this scenario again and again. Okay, those behind the scenes persistently encouraging the masses to destroy the Jews while they stay piously and explain that it's actually holy to get rid of them. Okay? Oh, I'm not guilty of it. It's only individual Jews we hate, not the Jewish people. So his hate consequently fills Balaam. He realizes He can't operate alone. He needs his financial and social backing. All right? Eventually, he's killed by the very people he attempted to destroy. But Balak, wait, my hair's in my eyes. I'm losing my passion. Balak always lives on. We have Balaks among us, trying to accomplish the destruction of our Jewish nation. Balak will never make peace with the idea that God in heaven is never going to allow him to accomplish his goal. He's tenacious in his hatred and his evil behavior. That's the true hallmark of who he is. Centuries later, my friends, the prophet reminds us of Balak's scheme and his advice to Balaam. And the prophets warn us to not overlook the king's backseat role in the story of aggression and unreasoned hatred. Remember, he disappears from the stage very quickly, leaving Balaam center role to receive the tomatoes, the rotten tomatoes. We have to remember that the original Balak, and to remain informed that by remembering him, we can always identify him and deal with his successors in deceit and the hatred throughout the ages. And I'm going to actually say that and say, I always felt that the name Balak rhymed very nicely with the name Barak. And we know of whom I'm speaking. Okay. So it is not, let's go on, some more notes here. Okay, yeah. So Balaam, he's kind of like a suicide bomber. He's not the only guilty party in these terrorist attacks. It's the Balaks who send them, okay? Not the poor schlubs who are on the planes, encouraging them to crash. It's the Balaks who are supporting them. These pious human rights organizations I came across that promote, I think it was Rabbi Wein who actually brings this down, that promote only hatred and violence under the guise of doing good deeds. These are the ones that are responsible for the loss of precious lives, not only Jewish lives, of innocence caused by those who they so carefully nurture and promote and support. The Talmud states that this reality is coined in the famous Jewish phrase, it's not the mouse alone that's the thief. It's the hole in the wall that allows the mouse entry into the house that is the real thief. It's the persistence of those that are determined to undermine the Jewish people in the state of Israel that places them as directly immoral descendants of Balak. You know, in the Pesach Haggadah, the book, the story that we read during our Passover Seder, we read that in every generation we face this challenge. Woohoo, surprise, surprise. No matter how many Bilams we are able to dispose of, Balak somehow survives to continue to try again. The schlubs, the schmucks who attach explosive belts to themselves, the girls who lure, what are they called, honey traps, who lure them. They're pawns. The Balaks are always the ones behind them. The words of the prophet in this week's Parsha to remember Balak's role in the story of the Jewish people in the desert of Sinai, they were addressed to us again and again. We shouldn't be shocked. We can be sad, but don't be stupid. Understand that the fight against the Jews in 1930s was repeated in 2011. It came back again, 2020, on and on and on. Both Moshe and Balaam make their own marks on our history. Balaam was brilliant. He was given this gift of prophecy by Hashem. And what did he do? He left a monument of falsehood and trickery. You know, I get this great description. Oh, yeah. According to Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, he answers by bringing forth this analogy. The eagle and the bat both know the times of the rising and setting of the sun, but for opposite reasons. The eagle rejoices in the sun's rays, while in the darkness, he's blind. He's incapacitated. On the other hand, the bat finds pleasure only in the gloom and the shadow of the night. He shrinks from daylight. because daylight is when his sight dims. Both of them feel the coming of the dawn, but the sensations are completely different. For the eagle, it means clarity and vision, and indeed joy. For the bat, it's obscurity, it's confusion. You know, talents are given by God, just like the ability to predict, to prophesize. They're given by God in all his wisdom to each one of us. We all have purpose in this world. We all have function. It's for we, the individuals, to exploit our gifts to the greatest spiritual advantage possible to us, to develop morality, even if we come from a place that's indeed immoral. Every person is encouraged by God to use our own tools to carve out our own contributions to perfection. But how can we perceive our level? You can have 3 men attending a Sabbath meal. One comes out and says, I love the Torah talk. Another one says, oh, the singing was beautiful. The other one says, the last one says, wow, fantastic herring. According to Rabbi Miller, you can tell the essence of a person by what he talks about the most and what excites him. What will be your contribution, your monument? Maybe it can be found in what excites you. Shabbat Shalom U'Mivorach from Jerusalem.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
Howdy, this is Rita from League City, Texas, now living in Israel. And though my heart may have belonged to Texas, it now belongs to Israel and all the fantastic show hosts at Israel News Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Michael Solomon from Kiryat Arba, Israel. And why do I love listening to Israel News Talk Radio? Because I love listening to the interesting interviews they do and their news reporting that most other media sources don't cover.
Hey, this is Nicoleko from Malmö, Sweden. It gets pretty cold here in Sweden, so I love cuddling up with a warm cup of tea while I listen to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey everybody, this is Frank Morris from Tennessee. Me and my dog Buster really love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.